I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
I'll just mute my video so that all my network is channeled towards the presentation. So once again, good morning, everyone, to this AICTE sponsored advanced CFD program using a Fluidigm, which is being organized by Alliance University, and Fluidigm is happy to be a partner in this. So the program you already know, it's a 3 sessions, 5-day program. In the first session, that is the current one, the inauguration is just finished, and an overview of the FDP program has been given already. I will start by giving an introduction to Fluidigm, and then I will take you all through a whirlwind tour of CFD, and then I will give an overview of the Fluidigm software platforms that will be used over these sessions. In this next session, Mr. Subhash Shinde will give an online training or demonstration on how to create geometries, how to generate grids. And in session 3, in fact, he will go into more details of that, where you could also practice if time permits. Tomorrow, in the first session, which will be managed by Alliance University, it will be on heat transfer and CFD applications in aerospace and defense industries. Session 5 is on combustion, fire and explosion by Dr. Chandil Kumar. Session 6 on ventilation and smoke propagation by Dr. Chandil Kumar. On the third day, we have a session by Dr. Anil Kumar on multi-phase flows, various aspects of multi-phase flows, what techniques are used to solve different types of multi-phase flows. Session 8 on fluid structure interaction or FSI, again by Dr. Anil Kumar. And the third session on that day, Subhash will tell you how Fluidigm can be used for various cement industry applications. There are various applications inside cement in the industry where CFD can be used, and he is going to give details of that. On the fourth day, we start with a session by Dr. Anil Kumar on nuclear industry applications. Second session will be on piping and process industry applications, which will cover chemical, petrochemical, pharmaceutical, or other chemical industries. And CFD applications in that. Session 12 will be on automotive, railway, and tunnel CFD applications by Subhash. On the last day, we have a session by Dr. Anil Kumar on electromagnetics applications, which will cover electrolysis cells, fuel cells, electrostatics like motors, induction coils, things like that, and other applications where electromagnetics is closely linked with CFD. The last session, technical session, will be by Krishna Prasad, which will be on atmospheric flows and air quality. And that's followed by a wild diction. I am sorry that actually we cannot cover more sessions, more applications in this, like water resource engineering. I heard that there are some people from water resource engineering also here. So hopefully we can do another program which will cover that. Fluidigm has been in this business of CFD and multiphysics for over 30 years now. Fluidigm is a company which is specialized in design and optimization of industrial processes, reduction of industrial risks, environmental impact assessment, ventilation of enclosed spaces or semi-enclosed spaces. All these areas actually by using numerical tools. So we have been working in process optimization like CFD and multiphysics, fluid structure interaction, heat transfer, electromagnetics, magnetohydrodynamics, electrochemistry. We have equally worked well in environmental impact, covering urban air quality, air and water quality, surface water as well as groundwater, the pollution through those things, odor dispersions, and CBRN. The third area of our expertise lies in industrial risk. We are very strong in this. We have tools, dedicated tools, application-specific tools in hazard studies, in dispersion of toxic flammable gases, radionuclides, and the consequences thereof in terms of fire and explosion. We also have tools for FNG mapping, fire and gas mapping, real-time emergency planning and response, on which Krishna Prasad is going to talk later. The last but not the least is the ventilation of enclosed and semi-enclosed spaces. We have tools for ventilation optimization, thermal comfort, as well as indoor air quality. Fluidan has developed a series of tools, software platforms for the application that I mentioned earlier. The first of these is a multi-physics based simulation tool called Fluidan MP, which is going to be largely used in this program, which I also suppose that you have a copy of for use in this training program. Fluidan MP is a general purpose multi-physics simulation tool. It contains fluid solvers, structural solvers using finite volumes and finite elements respectively. It also comes with a built-in coupling between the finite element and finite volume solvers so that you can do coupled applications like fluid structure interaction, conjugate heat transfer, or electromagnetics. The MP is also validated and used by prestigious clients in nuclear and defense industry. Fluidan MP comes with several software modules. The first and foremost is Fluidan CAE, which is the CAD front end, which is used to generate CAD model and prepare it for meshing. And then I will go into details later. Fluidan NS is a CFD solver which is part of MP. Fluidan FSI is the fluid structure interaction module of MP. CHT is for conjugate heat transfer in industrial problems. And lastly, we have a module for electromagnetic applications. Apart from the general purpose CFD or multi-physics tool, Fluidan also has developed several application-specific tools. The first of which is the Panache family of softwares meant only for air pollution or whatever happens in air, like explosion or fire also. It comes with several modules like PAN-EAA for environmental impact assessment, PAN-ROAD for impact of a particular road or highway, PAN-AIR for urban air quality, and then you have a tool for real-time impact of industrial emissions, could be water emissions or anything else. The second platform is for water resources, groundwater and surface water. It's called FlowSolve. You have a version for river pollutions, oil movement in water, sedimentation, and also groundwater. The third platform is Ventil, which is for enclosed spaces or semi-enclosed spaces. It comes in several modules again. Ventilim is for only ventilation applications. Ventex is for explosion simulations. Ventfire is for fire applications. Ventunnel is a trained dedicated module for tunnel, road tunnel or railway tunnels, ventilation inside them. Ventmine is for the underground mines. Lastly, we have several application dedicated tools for hazards and risks. The first of which is assess risk, which is used to estimate the risk associated with any particular incident that can happen even in a plant. PAN-fire is for fire radiation due to solid fires or liquid fires, pool fires. PAN-APR is for dispersion of toxic or heavy gases through atmosphere or in an industrial complex, which can later lead to an explosion, which you can do with the Ventex or Ventfire for the fire. You also have a tool for called PANWAVE for the simulation of liquid overflow from storage tanks over the bunds around them. Fluidan has a large international network. Its main technical centers are in France, in Bangalore, and in Beijing. We have commercial agencies spread all over the world, in Seoul, in Tokyo, in Lyon, Mexico, and Ankara, Turkey as well. We have worked with many industries across all sectors all over the world. Of course, we have, since it is a French company to start with, we have a lot of French references. Safran, for example, which is in aerospace defense applications, DGA for defense again, Naval Group for defense, Zodiac again, which is commonly used in defense. We have clients in nuclear sector, GE, ITER, automotive sector, and general industries like Solvay, Ajinomoto. We have several international references like JAXA, for example, in Japan, several Chinese references, and British as well. In India, we have a large presence among the defense R&D labs run by DRDO, ISRO, all the centers of ISRO, as well as nuclear establishments, all centers of DAE, Department of Atomic Energy, like DRC, NPCIL, IGCAR, AERB, IPR. We also have worked or working with several other government departments like NCCR, CIMFR, NCB, that is a cement board, NHSRCL, SAIL, and many public sector companies like Indian Oil, HP, Bharat Petroleum, and we are also very proud of our association with private industries like Reliance, BASF, Aditya Birla, Tata Consulting Engineers, DLF, Bosch, to name a few. We have a very close collaboration with academic institutes. We collaborate in either by training or by jointly developing several modules. We have collaborations with many IITs, prominent among which are Kanpur, Bombay, Guwahati, Delhi, Madras, and Dhanbad. NIT Kurukshetra has been our partner for quite many years, Mangalore University also, Anna University, and foremost of all is Alliance University in Bangalore, with whom we have been associated for the past more than 6-7 years now in various capacities. Sweden also has closely participated in professional and academic bodies all over the world in various capacities. We have worked with KIT, we have worked with ITER, Committee Industrial ITER, that is ITER, the industrial platform, SFP, FF2P, and SAFE, some of which are very well-known collaborating platforms across the world. Sweden is a self-financing company. We self-finance the R&D also. 20% of the turnover is flowed back into R&D. We have bagged several prizes, including JESIP Innovation Prize in 2019, GEP FTP Innovation Prize in 2014, VNC Innovation Trophy in 2015, Solvay Innovation Prize in 2006. Some of the recent projects which are heavily R&D based are the CTEF project on supercritical CO2, the carbon sequestration, DGA rapid discard for CBRN related projects, and we have executed recently or are continuing to execute R&D projects on behalf of BIRC for radionuclide aerosol dispersion, on which Dr. Anil Kumar is going to talk in detail later. We are also active members of French working groups on dispersion and explosion modeling. The speakers from Sweden side, I would like to introduce you. This is myself, Arun Murthy. I started with VSSC and then joined Sweden in 1989. So I've been with them for the last 32 years now. I'm very proud to introduce our team, who are among the very best in their respective fields. I'm very proud to be a colleague to Dr. Anil Kumar, who is Director of Multiphysics. After his PhD from IISc in solid propellant combustion, he joined Sweden, and he has been with us for the last almost 20 years now. He mainly specializes in multi-phase flows, nuclear applications, turbulent combustion, explosion, electromagnetic applications. He is an expert in these fields. Dr. Chandil Kumar, he is General Manager of Ventil. He is an expert in turbulent combustion again. He has developed several new techniques which are competing with the very best tools in the world in GDXFlow working group or HIC benchmarking platforms. He specializes in fire and explosion and thermal radiation modeling. Krishna Prasad Acharya, he has been with us for more than 20 years now. He is a specialist in atmospheric pollution, including environmental impact assessment, quantitative risk assessment, CD COD modeling of atmospheric dispersion, FNG mapping, real-time modeling. Subhash has been with us now for the last 8 years. He is actually with Sweden, France. He is doing his PhD at EM2C University of Paris. He has managed several CFD and multiphysics consultancy projects. His expertise right now lies with turbulent combustion, on which he is doing very advanced research. CFD, general application to various sectors. He is a specialist in cement applications and tunnel, railways and tunnel applications, which he is going to talk in detail later. Shailesh has been with us for 3 years now after his stint at ADE. He is an expert in safety analysis, validations, and training. He is going to assist Subhash in the training sessions. Similarly, Stephen has been with us now for the last 2 years. He will help Subhash in the training program when it comes to safety analysis. So we are located the two main centers of Sudan, one in France and one in Bangalore. I will now go to the second part of my talk, which is on the review of fluid dynamics, CFD. So welcome to the second part of my talk. I will not take much time. I have only 1 hour to finish this one. So basically, I'm going to give a word. I'm going to take you through a whirlwind tour of CFD because I know that many of you already have exposure to CFD. Some of you have had formal training in CFD, either in the form of classroom lectures, or you have already used CFD tools. But there could be some who are new to CFD. So I thought of giving a brief introductory talk of CFD, not only for the sake of them, but also to serve as a background to the further sessions of this training program. The outline of this lecture is going to be the first part on CFD theory, the basics of CFD theory, the physical model and the numerical model, a brief talk on turbulence models, and some notes on CFD, how CFD is practiced in the best way. I'm not going to talk about other applications on which my colleagues will talk in detail later. To start with, you already know, you very well know these equations which govern fluid flow. The continuity equation, which is a conservation equation for the mass, a Navier-Stokes equation, which are the conservation equation of momentum, which result from direct application of Newton's second law to fluid flow. And lastly, the energy equation, which is the conservation equation of energy, which results from the first law of thermodynamics. All these equations actually can be expressed in a common form known as a convective diffusive equation. So you can see the form here. The first term on the left side is the transient term. The second term is the convective term. The third term is the diffusive term. And last term, or the second term on the right hand side, is the source term. So depending on the phi variable, all the equations that I showed in the previous slide can be expressed. The continuity equation results when you substitute phi equal to 1. When you substitute phi equal to u, which stands for a vector, flow velocity vector, normally in terms of UVW, which is taken as the components of velocity vector in the xyz direction in the Eulerian space. So you get the Navier-Stokes equations. If you substitute phi equal to t, then you get temperature equation. And similarly, you will get species constant equation or other equations which will be used during the CFD analysis. So in this equation, you can see that the known or independent variables are the space x and time t. And we would like to predict now the unknowns as a function of x and t. The unknown variables are velocity components u, pressure p, density rho, temperature t, or species concentration y. There could be other variables when you add additional models like turbulence model. How do we solve these equations, or how do we use these laws actually to calculate the unknowns? Please note that these equations are nonlinear partial differential equations. And secondly, they are coupled. For example, here in the momentum equation, we have both density and the velocity vector components and pressure. That means different variables are part of that, different unknowns are part of the same equation. So they are actually coupled to each other. So coupled nonlinear partial equations are very difficult to solve. You can solve them directly only for simplest of cases. For example, when you simplify the Navier-Stokes equations for an inviscid flow through a streamline or stream tube, you get Bernoulli's equation, which you can solve analytically. Poisson flow or the one-dimensional diffusion dominated flow between flat plates, boundary layer flows, or jets, axisymmetric of planar jets. There are several other simpler applications where you can simplify the equations to either linear partial differential equations or ordinary differential equations, which can be solved using analytical techniques. The only solution procedure now to solve them is numerical integration. You have three types of analysis that is possible: macroscopic analysis or the analytical method. The second is the microscopic analysis or CFD that we are going to use throughout the training program here. The third one is a molecular approach where we simulate directly the fluids as a bunch of molecules. We are not going to talk about it much in this one. So you have two ways of solving those equations numerically. The first is called the discrete approach, where the fluid medium is represented by parcels or particles moving and interacting with each other. The first of them is the discrete particle method, DPM, and the discrete element method, which is used to represent, for example, water droplets or bubbles. We have SPH or smooth particle hydrodynamics, which is used to simulate fluid flow, where it uses a formulation of fluid where the fluid is represented as an ensemble of particles interacting with each other to represent the pressure or the heat transfer. Lastly, the last discrete approach is called the molecular dynamics or direct simulation Monte Carlo, DSMC simulation, where fluid molecules or atoms are directly simulated, either each one separately, in which case it is called molecular dynamics. That means each molecule is tracked and its interaction with each other molecules and the wall or the walls. It is called molecular dynamics. Or you represent a bunch of particles together and you assume that they move together with the same properties, then it is called a Monte Carlo simulation. These DSMC or the molecular dynamics MD simulations are very, very expensive. They are useful only when the number of molecules is limited, which occurs normally in vacuum conditions. So for pressures below, let's say 1 Pascal, or where the Knudsen number is of the appropriate order, then you can use these techniques, or those techniques becomes inevitable. The second approach is a continuum approach, which we are going to use in this training program, is when the fluid flow properties are expressed as continuous differentiable function. That means u is a function of only x and t, and we can express it as a function which can be differentiated. So now this, once you assume that the differential equations can describe the fluid flow, there have been different methods used to solve these sets of differential equations. The first of which is the finite difference method, which originated more than 80 years back, or almost a century back now. So it involves Taylor series formations for the differential functions like gradient or Laplace operators. And these Taylor series functions are evaluated on a structured mesh. The second one is finite element method, which has been very popular in structural mechanics. It uses basically shape functions or a continuous function of a variable inside each element as a function of its values on the nodes. The last of which is the finite volume method, or also known as control volume method, which is very popular in CFD. In this talk, I am going to focus on finite volume method because I don't have much time to spend on other two. So what do we do in the continuum methods? We basically discretize the domain into small parts. So for example, if you want to simulate the flow through this pipe, I break the pipe into several small zones called control volumes, or it is also known as mesh. Each one of them is a control volume, and I solve the equation over each control volume using the numerical methods. So what does it involve? It involves discretization of the independent variables, that is space and time. So when I discretize in space, I get what is known as grid or mesh, what you can see here. And when I discretize time, I get what is known as time steps. The accuracy of the discretization depends on the level of discretization. That means you use a finer mesh, it is always better for the results, you get more accuracy. Smaller the time step, you always have more accurate results. So the derivative function is always expressed as del phi by del x is equal to a limit of delta phi by delta x, or limit as delta x tends to 0, delta phi by delta x, where delta x represents a grid size, for example. So mathematically, please note that this discretization is equivalent to the derivative. That means delta phi by delta x approaches del phi by del x only as delta x tends to 0. That is why errors reduce as the grid size reduces. So in finite volume method, we solve the integral form of the convective diffusive equation. The convective diffusive equation is like this. So when I integrate using Gauss theorem, I get an equation like this. To go back, this was the differential equation. This is the differential equation which I transformed using the discretization into this form. So it is basically a delta of rho phi into omega, where the omega is the control volume, volume of the cell, by delta d, plus integral over the boundary of the surface, boundary of the cell, of rho u dot n, which represents the convective flux, convective mass flux. Phi is the variable that we are going to solve. So it is the convective flux of the variable phi on the surface of the control volume. This first term on the right hand side defines the surface integral resulting from the diffusion flux. Gamma is the diffusion coefficient, delta phi is the gradient of phi, which is found on the cell face. And lastly, you have the surface, the volumetric integral of the source term. S phi stands for the source term, d omega for the control volume. So it's a control volume based formulation. It enforces strong conservation. That is the main advantage of finite volume method. And it is also physically intuitive, because I can talk in terms of change in some quantity in a cell, or how much of that quantity is converted into the cell or is converted out of a cell. And I can talk in terms of how much of the variable is diffused from the neighboring cell into that cell. So I can physically attach meaning to each of these terms rather than their mathematical forms. So we have a choice of finite volume grids typically used in CFD. The first of which is a structured mesh, which is mainly made of rectangular cells in 2D or hexagonal cells in 3D. The second one is called unstructured grid, which is made of several types of elements. For example, in 2D, you can have a triangle or a quadrilateral, what you can see here. Or in 3D, it can be, a grid can be a tetrahedron or a hexagon, a pyramid or a prism. You can also have polyhedral elements these days. So all these are unstructured meshes. You can also have, thirdly, a non-matching grid, what is also known as non-conformal grid. That means each grid is of different size in different areas, and they are linked to each other. You can see that here the grid density is not same. They don't match actually, for example, at this case. So how do you solve now? As I told you, the equations are coupled equations. Momentum is coupled to mass, and when temperature is changing, density is also coupled to temperature. So how do we solve this system of coupled equations? There are two methods, popular methods. One is called density based method, where I solve directly for density, momentum, and energy, and I use an equation of state to calculate pressure. So this method is very popular or more relevant in compressible flows. Compressible flows where the speeds are quite high and the pressure density coupling is very strong. The time integration normally is transient. You can use explicit or implicit methods. In the second type of methods, which we are going to largely use in our training seminar, is pressure based method, where I solve for U, momentum, pressure, and temperature, and I use the equation of state to calculate density. This method can be used for incompressible or compressible flows, steady or transient flows. But the density based methods are normally used for transient flows. It can be used for steady state also. As time tends to infinity, it becomes a steady state solution. How do we discretize now infinite volume method? So we have the first form, which I already showed you, which is an integral form, that is transformed into an algebraic equation like this. A simple equation, for example, for an incompressible flow, it becomes like this. Rho v is the density and volume of the cell. Change in the quantity, any variable, it could be density, it could be x velocity, it could be temperature. So change in the variable in a one time step divided by time step itself, plus rho into some of the convective fluxes or the four phase. For example, in 2D, each cell has four phases. In 3D, a hexagon will have six phases. So this is the sum over all the phases of the convective flux. Similarly, on the right hand side, you have a sum over all the phases of the element, the diffusive flux, and lastly the source term. So now, how are these? So these things are very easy to define. For example, phi n plus 1 means the variable value that we are trying to calculate at the end of the current time step. Phi n plus 1 stands for the value of the variable phi at the end of the current time step. Phi n stands for the current value of phi. So these are known already. This is not known, this is known. Rho and v are also already known. Now on the surface of each element, I may be knowing the velocity, but I will not be knowing phi s. How do we calculate phi s there? That is a crux of one of these CFD problems. And I also need to calculate the gradient on the cell face. So what I do is I use gradients in the cell-centered values and calculate the gradient on the face, which gives me second order accuracy. I also calculate phi s using what is known as numerical scheme, which will determine the accuracy of the method. There are many ways of calculating the time derivative. I am giving only two examples here. There are other examples like Rank-Nicolson method or even higher Runge-Kutta method and other methods. The first one is called the first order Euler integral method, where del phi by del t is directly expressed as phi n plus 1 minus phi n by delta n plus 1. That means phi n plus 1, as I told you, already stands for variable value at the end of the current time step. And phi n is the current value of the variable. In the second order or the three-time level method, I express del phi by del t using a central difference kind of thing. So I use three values now, phi n plus 1, which I am trying to calculate now. Phi n is the current value, and phi n minus 1 is the value in the previous time step. So using these two values, I calculate phi n plus 1. This gives me, the second one gives me a second order accurate result in time. How do we calculate gradient now? The gradient is calculated in each cell using Green-Gauss theorem. So it is a simple summation of the variable phi with the area vector and the normal vector. Phi f is again calculated using different numerical schemes. The central difference scheme, for example, is like phi u, that is if u and d are the two cells across a face attached to the face, phi u defines the value in cell u. Zeta u is the distance from the cell center to the face center. Phi d is the value of the variable in cell d, and xi d is the distance between d and f. So I can also add actually a term which corrects for the non-orthogonality of the mesh. For example, in this case, when I use only the first two terms, I get the value here. I get the value what is known as phi fi here. I get the value here, but I need to calculate the f value at the center of the face. So I had to add a correction term, which is expressed as a third term in this equation, del phi by del x dot m bar. M bar is the distance from the fi point to f point. For an orthogonal mesh, please note that m bar will be 0. So how do we calculate now this? Because there is a gradient term here, and I am trying to calculate the gradient. So I use an iterative method to calculate the gradient, maybe 2 or 3 iterations. This is required or useful when you have skew meshes. The convective flux now, the gradient, as I told you, is used in calculating the diffusive flux. Once I know the gradient, I can calculate the diffusive flux directly, because it is just the gradient multiplied by the area vector. How do I calculate the convective flux now? The convective flux, as you know, as you have already seen, it is expressed as mass flux multiplied by the value of the variable on the phase F. So m dot F into phi F. So m dot F, for example, when I am solving for temperature, m dot F may be known to me. I know already the mass flux. How do I calculate now temperature at the phase? So there are several ways of calculating temperature at the phase. So you have a 1D scheme or you have multi-dimensional scheme. In a multi-dimensional scheme, for example, I calculate the value of the phase Uij using all these marked values. 6 values you can see that. It becomes multi-dimensional. That is expensive. Normally people use a 1D scheme where I calculate Uij using only these two values which are colored in orange, phi ij and phi I plus 1j. But the resolution also determines, please note that also determines the accuracy of the method. So now there are different ways in calculating the phi f, which is required by me. The first one is called the pure donor cell, where I set, for example, you take a cell here, which is cell phase, which is denoted by the green line, F. I have a cell C, which is called the upwind cell, if the flow direction is like this, and D is the downwind cell. So the C and D are actually like this here. There are two cells attached to that, which I called here U and D. I'm changing the U to C. Here, C and D. C is the upwind cell, D is the downwind cell for this flow direction. So the pure donor cell scheme, or what is also known as upwind scheme, I set phi f is equal to directly phi c. This is only first order accurate. It is not second order accurate. If you want second order accuracy, then you need a central difference scheme where I express phi f as an average of phi c and phi d, the upwind and downwind both. But this is unstable because it can, if for example, if you have phi c and phi d are very high, so phi f also will be very low. But if you have a checkerboard pattern, then you won't be able to detect it. So it can enhance or amplify oscillations, thereby leading to divergence. So what is normally done is that these two schemes are blended. So you use second order upwind scheme where I blend these two values, or else I use you can hear me now? Hello? Okay, I don't know. I just unmuted and muted.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, some of the participants are messaging in the group like voice is not clear. If possible, can you please use your headphones, sir?
Okay. Okay. Please wait.
Yes.
You can hear me now?
Oh.
Is it okay? Hello?
No, sir. My voice is very feeble now. Can I ask the participants or the co-host, Professor Hari Prasad, Professor Yadu Krishnan, can you please rectify? Can you hear?
Yeah, Arun.
Can you hear me or it is still feeble?
No, sir. Your voice has become even more feeble.
1 second.
Oh, you have to increase it.
Now you can hear me?
Yes.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Sir.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
I think
Loud and clear.
participants are also able to hear now. We will just have a chat with them. You can please continue, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So I was going through this convective flux. So I was telling that we have a second order of wind schemes to calculate the value of the variable phi at the phase on the phase using second or even third order accuracy. So there are two classes of such schemes. One is called the TVD based scheme, and second is the NVD based scheme or normalized vector diagram. So I will not go into details of them because time is short. But for those of you who are interested, I can give references, or we can have a separate session to discuss them. So once I have the numerical parameters in place, I still need information on the boundary conditions, because I have a domain like the pipe flow, for example, I showed. So I have an inlet and an outlet there. So I need to define the boundary conditions for all the variables on all the boundaries of the domain. For example, I have an inlet, I may have an outlet, and I have a wall all around. So what kinds of boundary conditions are typically used in CFD? You have a major condition called inlet, where I know that the flow is entering the domain. There are three ways I can express the incoming flow. So the first one is the specified velocity, where U and T and Y means the species concentration is specified or imposed. The pressure is extrapolated from inside the domain. Density is calculated from equation of state, and m dot f is calculated from the imposed quantities. The second one is the specified mass flow rate. I specify directly m dot, and I calculate U from m dot. The third one is the total pressure condition, where I specify the total pressure or the total temperature directly, both total pressure and total temperature both, and I calculate the static pressure from inside the domain. And for compressible flows, I calculate the Mach number now from the pressure ratio, from the ratio of the static pressure to total pressure. And for the Mach number, I can calculate other properties like the temperature and the species mass fraction and density. So there are different applications where these three boundary conditions is useful. Specified velocity or specified mass flow rates boil down to the same thing for the incompressible flows. So these two are popularly used when you know the flow rate directly. Like pipe flow, for example, I am passing let's say 10 liters per minute or the 100 meter cube per hour of flow through the pipe. So I can specify directly the velocity there. I can calculate the velocity and I can specify it. But sometimes for external flows, for example, I don't know the velocity. For example, flow over an aircraft or something, I may be knowing the aircraft velocity, but still I would like to specify total pressure or total temperature, and I calculate the Mach number from the flow velocity that develops because of the pressure ratio, and I calculate other things. Total pressure conditions are useful for external flows, and sometimes for internal flows also, when I don't know the mass flow rate directly. You have the second condition, that is outlet. So the outlet condition is normally of two types. One is where you specify the pressure directly, static pressure, and the velocity is extrapolated. Temperature and y is interpolated depending on the flow direction, and density is calculated from equation of state. Then you have total pressure condition, also can be used for outlet, where I specify total pressure and temperature at the outlet, and static pressure is extrapolated from inside, and I calculate U from the Mach number and density from equation of state. The third condition, physical boundary condition, that is normally used in CFD is the wall condition. So for a moving wall, I set U is equal to U wall. That is, flow velocity is equal to velocity of the wall. So for a stationary wall, U is always 0 at the wall. I extrapolate pressure. Temperature is, if it is isothermal wall, then the temperature value is known. Or if it is adiabatic wall, then the temperature value is normally set to the inside value. Now for the species mass fraction, it can be either specified in special cases, or you can have a flux. For example, a deposition, species is getting deposited, or it reacts there. So there is a flux of that species to the wall from the fluid. So I specify that flux, or I calculate that flux. On all the walls, m dot f, the mass flux through the wall is always 0, typically. Okay, and I calculate the shear stress using the Newton's law, law of viscosity, mu into del U by del X at the wall. Apart from these three physical conditions, physical boundary conditions, I also need some numerical boundary conditions, because many times it so happens that I cannot have a domain very big, or I need to truncate the domain. So in which case I will need to apply boundary conditions on those fictitious domain extents. So a typical boundary condition that is used is a symmetry condition, for example. For example, you take an axisymmetric flow through a pipe. I can either simulate the flow through a pipe through the whole pipe, or else I can simulate it as a 2D in cylindrical coordinates. So what I do is I take a sector of let's say 5 degrees or 2 degrees, and on the two rectangular wall boundaries of that sector, I apply symmetry, what is known as symmetry condition, because its flow is axisymmetric. Or there can be a periodic condition. For example, if the flow is swirling, then I need to apply a periodic condition. What enters this field, for example, here, it leaves here. So I apply a periodic condition there. In external flows, I also use a third thing called a free stream condition, where I know the free stream values like pressure, temperature, and flow speed I may be knowing. So I apply them, or the Mach number I may be knowing. So with these things, with the boundary conditions, with the numerical discretization, and with the initial conditions, now I have come to the last stage where I can solve direct for phi n plus 1. That is what we are solving. Value of phi at the end of the current time step in each cell. So when I sum all the equations, because as I told you, it's a coupled coupled system of equations. So when I put all the equations together or all the cells in the mesh, I get actually an algebraic equation of this form, where AP is the coefficient, AN is the neighbor coefficient, QP is the source term. So it is sort of a banded matrix like this. The system of equations is actually representing a matrix like this of coefficients, the column vector of unknowns phi, and on the right side you have the forcing function B, forcing vector B. B is known, A is known. I need to calculate X. So how do I calculate now? If it is a small matrix, I can directly use Gauss-Seidel or some simple method and calculate phi. But when I have a million cells, for example, I'll be having million such equations, and I cannot easily invert this matrix. A matrix is too big to invert, so I cannot directly invert it. Also, please note that this matrix A is sparse. It has only few items which are non-zero. The rest of them are all zero. Even for this 3 by 3 mesh, 3 cells by 3 cells mesh, only so many are there. And if you have a million by million mesh, most of the matrix elements will be zero, with only 5 or 6 or 7, 6 at best for a hexagonal cell. You will have 6 or 7 elements only non-zero. So that makes A sparse matrix. So what I do is I use this nature of A to invert it. A sparse matrix, there are different methods of inverting. So what I always use iterative solvers, because iterative solvers are very efficient and fast for sparse matrices. All the iterative solvers are based on what is known as conjugate gradient method. I will not go into mathematical details of that. Conjugate gradient methods try to reduce what is known as the residual, conjugate gradient residual of the system. The residual is defined of the system, which is defined normally in terms of the algebraic equation, the error in this equation. So I try to minimize it using different methods. The popular among them is the ICCG method, incomplete Cholesky precondition for symmetric matrices. You get a symmetric matrix when you solve it for pressure. Our conjugate squared CG stab method for non-symmetric matrices. Lastly, algebraic method for symmetric matrices. So how do I solve now the equations? So in the coupled solution procedure, I have to solve all the equations together, mass, momentum, and energy together in coupled fashion. It's a robust formulation for compressible flows, but it requires very high computational resources because I'm trying to solve all these equations together. Please note that this matrix is only for one variable. For example, it may be only rho. Similarly, if you have u, v, w, and temperature, for example, so I have 5 variables. So the matrix now becomes, you have 5 times the longer the unknown vector, and the matrix will become 25 times, 5 times bigger. So it is very difficult to solve that kind of system of equations. So there are different methods to simplify it, like explicit method. The second approach which we use typically and which will be mostly used in the training seminars, this particular FDP, is a segregated solution procedure. What we do is we solve equations one after the other. That means I solve, for example, first mass continuity equation. And using that density, I solve each of those momentum equations, u, v, w. So when I solve for u, for example, I assume that v and w are known. Or when I solve for w, I assume that I know u and v. So like that, I solve each of the equations one after the other. So this makes it actually the coupling between these three weak. So there are ways actually to address this coupling issue. So you have a special coupling procedures, or else you use iterative, because we are solving a system of coupled equations, but we are solving now one after the other. So there will be obviously there will be errors in the solution. So I have to iterate the solution to get the final solution. This requires lower computational resource, and this is the most popular method used in industrial CFD, segregated solution procedure. Lastly, now, one equation that we had talked is the momentum equation, which is here. For example, when I solve this momentum equation, there is a variable pressure here, but I don't know the pressure. And there is no direct equation for pressure actually, anywhere. No, I cannot calculate pressure in terms of other variables. How do I calculate it? So what I do is actually I substitute the continuity equation into momentum equation, and I can, by eliminating some terms, by making some assumptions, I can deduce a Laplace equation for pressure. Please note that this is not an exact equation. This is only an approximate equation. So this equation I can solve since this Laplace equation is pressure, where the right hand side I am supposed to know u, for example, velocity, and I know the density, for example. So I can calculate pressure using this. A very popular method of calculating pressure is known as simple. You already have heard about it. Semi-implicit method for pressure linked equations developed by Patankar and Spalding. So this method involves several steps. First, what I do is I solve u with assumed p. By assumed p, basically it means the current value of pressure. So I get what is known as u star. Now I correct pressure by solving this equation. This equation is for the pressure correction. Please note this is a pressure correction equation. So I correct the pressure. So I get P. So once I get P, I update U by adding this updated pressure values. Then I solve for temperature or other variables like species concentration. Now I check if it is converged. If it is not, then I come back here and iteratively I solve this. This is known as simple. If I know that I have gone through these things very fast. So if you people would like to learn more about CFD, the mathematics behind it, or details which I have skipped, please refer to some of these books like Fuzzy and Felix, which is the Bible of CFD. Patankar's book is the best actually for a learner because it focuses on the physical aspects and it is very intuitive in approach. The third reference book is Versteeg's books on CFD. And lastly, Sebesi's book gives a lot of practical information, practical suggestions. The second topic that I would like to talk briefly is the terminus model.
we can solve the problems given. Can solve the problems given.
So as you know, all the flows actually become unstable above a certain Reynolds number because of chaos. So there is a certain value of the Reynolds number, which is called the transition Reynolds number, when a laminar flow turns into turbulent flow. For a pipe flow, typically it is like 2300. So for a pipe flow, the Reynolds number defined as rho Vd divided by mu, where d is the diameter. When the Reynolds number becomes more than 2300, the flow becomes turbulent. Flow of a flat plate, it becomes turbulent at around 5 lakh Reynolds number. Flow over a cylinder can become unsteady or turbulent even at very low Reynolds number like 10 or 1000. So what is the main effect of turbulence? Basically, turbulent fluctuations increase the transfer rate or the diffusion, and hence they increase mixing. So for example, a duct flow, typically a laminar flow will have a parabolic profile like this. In a turbulent flow, the profile becomes more uniform, except for steep gradients near the wall. So this is what is known as well mixed. This is not well mixed, for example, because the velocities are changing very much from the wall to the central line. Whereas here, the flow velocity more or less uniform, if not completely, and you have steep gradients only near the wall. Now, please note that this increases mixing, but at the same time, it is increasing the gradient value of velocity at the wall. So it automatically increases the frictional loss. So the pressure drop, for example, for the flow through a pipe, rapidly increases when the flow is turbulent compared to when the flow is laminar. How do we compute turbulence now? So you have turbulence actually, fluctuations, all the variables. You have fluctuations of density, fluctuations in pressure, fluctuations in flow velocity, temperature, species concentration, or any other variable that you are trying to solve. So typically, in engineering calculations, we express the instantaneous values as a sum of mean value and its variation. For example, you can see the graph here. You have a mean value and you have a fluctuating value at that time. So U is equal to U bar plus U dash. Type of turbulence. There are different types of turbulence actually. One is known as homogeneous, where the turbulence has the same structure quantitatively in all parts of the flow field. That's called homogeneous. Isotropic is when the turbulent behavior, the fluctuations do not have any directional preference. For example, the fluctuations in the U velocity are same as fluctuations in the V velocity or the W velocity. Then the turbulence is called isotropic. Lastly, you have anisotropic turbulence when the turbulent fluctuations have directional preference. So it happens, for example, in swirling flows or flows through square ducts and other applications. So how do we model now turbulence? So as we have already told, so we substitute U is equal to U bar plus U dash, a mean value plus a fluctuation. When you substitute this into the Navier-Stokes equation and take a time average of all the terms, I get an equation like this. So this equation now I try to solve. So we'll have to make further simplifications in order to avoid a lot of coupling. So what I do is I ignore the third order fluctuations. That means fluctuations of density, velocity, and any other scalar together. I assume that the correlation between the three is not important. I use a time average of fluctuations. That means U dash bar is equal to 0. That means there is a mean value always. There is a mean value, and the mean value does not change in time. It can change in space, but it won't change in time, or at least the time scale that I'm talking about. So by applying these three simplifications, finally I get this equation. So in this equation is very similar to the Navier-Stokes equation, what we have seen, except that you have one extra term now. This is called the Reynolds stress. So how do I calculate Reynolds stress is the crux of the model. There are different ways of calculating Reynolds stress. Please note that the Reynolds averaging, this process what I told, it results in approximating the flow. So a jet which in reality is like this, when you simulate using Reynolds averaging, you get a solution like this. A plume which is like this, the solution will look like this. It is hazy, and it is you lose important information due to Reynolds averaging. But for most of the engineering applications, this is sufficient because, for example, for the flow through pipelines of flow over the aircraft or something, I am interested only to know time average value of the drag forces acting on the aircraft. I don't want to know exactly the value of the drag at any particular instant, but I want to know on the average what will be the drag force acting on the aircraft, or what will be the pressure drop in a pipe. So when I'm interested only in such macroscopic properties, it is okay to lose resolution like this. It is still sufficient. But where such high resolution is important, you cannot use RANS. So now, as I told you, the crux of the turbulence model is calculating the Reynolds stress, which is actually a tensor, because u dash phi dash is a tensor. So you have, for example, for the Navier-Stokes equation, where phi represents the velocity, you have 6 terms here. You have u dash square, u dash v dash, u dash w dash, and v dash w dash. How do I solve now? How do I calculate the Reynolds stress? So I use a model now to calculate Reynolds stress. The first of the model is called viscosity model. So I calculate Reynolds stress based on the mean profiles. I will tell you what it means. And I can also use a Reynolds stress models where I calculate these tensor elements, each of them separately, by 6 equations. And I also have nonlinear additive viscosity model where you have algebraic models for the Reynolds stresses. The last one is LES, large area simulation, or the direct Navier-Stokes solution of the flow. This DNS, as you know, is very expensive. It is not typically used as a research tool or in benchmarking LES or eddy viscosity results. LES is useful for cases where the turbulence is anisotropic or where RANS models fail. There are many cases where RANS models fail actually, so where LES is useful. So we have various steps of mixing eddy viscosity models. Some of them are algebraic models, like integral models, like mixing length, or the Bernoulli-Lomax models. These are mixing length, Prandtl mixing length model or Bernoulli-Lomax models are integral. You don't have to solve for any differential equation. So these integral models are useful for boundary layer flows, nozzle flows, or jets, and they are very accurate actually for those flows compared to more complex models. You have a Spalart-Almaraz model, which is very popular in external aerodynamic studies, where I solve for one equation for the turbulent viscosity directly. Then comes what is called as 2-equation model, first of which is a standard K-epsilon model. It is widely used, and it is good for internal flows away from the walls. There are variations of K-epsilon model like Chen-Kim, RNG, realizable, the lower Reynolds number model, maybe hundreds of other variations of K-epsilon model. And there is a second class of 2-equation model where the epsilon equation is replaced by omega equation. It's called K omega model, vorticity model, which is good for wall bounded flows. There is SST model, which is also 2-equation model, which is good for both wall bounded and internal flows. Lastly, you have a 4-equation model called V squared F, which is good for stagnation point flows. I will now tell a little bit about the standard K-epsilon model. I will not delve into details of the other models. The K-epsilon model is a 2-equation model. It is intuitively formed actually. You have an equation for the terminal kinetic energy. K is defined as half of u dash squared plus v dash squared plus w dash squared, and its dissipation rate. So K equation can be derived from the Navier-Stokes equation. You just take the fluctuation of the velocity components, you can get K equation. But the epsilon, there is no equation for its dissipation rate. So what is done is it is formed intuitively. It is similar to the K equation, but with a proportionality constants and additional source terms. So the equation for the standard K-epsilon model is of this form. The first is the equation for turbulent kinetic energy. Second one is the equation for its dissipation rate. Both are convective diffusive equations, transient term, convective term, diffusive term, and the source terms. So in the K equation, you can see that there are two production terms. The first is the mechanical production term, Pk. Second is the buoyancy production term, which becomes important when the flow is buoyant or there are temperature variations or density variations in the flow. The third is the dissipation of that. The last one is important for compressible flows where the delta dot U is changing in time. The K-epsilon model advantages is that it is relatively simple and affordable because you have only two equations to solve. It leads to mostly stable calculations that converge easily, and it is reasonably accurate for a wide variety of flows without separation. The main advantage of K-epsilon model is that it is widely tested. So you have a large volume of testing and experience. People know its disadvantages and advantages very well. So you can very easily almost quantify the errors that you will get when you use K-epsilon model for any type of application. K-epsilon model is known to have poor results when you have complications in the flow, like you have swirling flow, rotating flow. K-epsilon model is not good. Flows with strong separation, again, the K-epsilon model is not good. Axisymmetric jets, it gives very poor predictions. Flows in non-circular ducts, when the flow becomes anisotropic, K-epsilon model fails. Region close to no-slip walls, actually K-epsilon model is not good. As I told you earlier, K-epsilon model is good away from the walls. But still, K-epsilon model, as you know, is the most popularly used model in CFD. The second aspect actually in turbulent flows is to quantify the turbulent boundary layer. As we know, the turbulent boundary layer is very thin. The gradients are very large. So if you want to resolve this gradient, that means you need to have very fine mesh near the wall, very, very fine mesh. So if you try to now refine the mesh density over the whole domain will become very big, and you could end up with too big a mesh and too difficult to solve. So what I do is, instead of using a very fine mesh, I approximate that the turbulent boundary layer near the wall behaves in a particular way. I use a model to calculate its behavior near the wall. So this is known as the wall function. So I use a wall function to calculate the turbulent shear stress near the wall. So you, in your fluid mechanics courses, you would already know, you would be knowing this logarithmic law for the wall. So the turbulent boundary layer is composed of three parts. The first is called the inner layer. Then you have the part. The comparison of various turbulence models, I thought I'll just tell you. The Spalart model, Almaraz model is not widely tested, but it has a very good track record for external flows or mildly complex boundary layer type of flows. Standard K-epsilon model is robust, economical, reasonably accurate, and as I told, its main advantage is that it has a large accumulated performance data, but it is very bad actually for complex flows with severe pressure gradients, curvatures like swirl or rotation or round jets. RNG model actually tries to correct some of these limitations. So it is good for moderately complex flows like jets, separating flows. Even for swirling flows, for example, RNG model is popularly used when you cannot afford the complex full Reynolds stress model. Thirdly, you have a realizable K-epsilon model, which is good for round jets. Wilcox K omega model is a good general model for the flows with adverse pressure gradients or flow separation. SST model combines advantages of both K-epsilon model and K omega model. It doesn't have any severe disadvantages, just like the realizable model. But please note that all these models will fail anisotropic. They will fail for anisotropic flows. So how do you solve actually now turbulent flow in CFD? You start the calculation solve with the standard K-epsilon model. If the flow inverse jets, what you do is you take the K-epsilon model result and then you convert this, you change it to realizable model and get the final solution. If the flow is dominated by swirl, you change it to RNG model. And then you continue the solution from the standard result and you get the final result. You can also do the calculations using SST K omega model from beginning to end. For aerodynamic flows, it is better to use SA model. For accurate drag predictions, you should use low Reynolds number K-epsilon model. You have these resources for the turbulence. Pope's book is the Bible for the turbulent flows. Tenekis only is a textbook, typical textbook actually to understand the physics of turbulence. The first three give very good information on turbulence models. Sabesi's book or Hangelik's books or Davidson's book. So we have talked actually about the theory of CFD, but it is equally important is how you practice it. How do you do a typical CFD simulation? You start with the domain that you are trying to model. For example, it could be a pipe. So you are trying to model the pipe. So you take a CAD model actually, and you get the CAD model of that. You discretize it. That means you generate a mesh, and then you solve the equations by applying the boundary conditions, by specifying the physical models like turbulence models, combustion models, radiation models, things like that. And then you apply the material properties. What is the material, whether it is a incompressible material or the compressible, and its properties. You apply the boundary conditions, you apply the initial conditions, then you can solve this. You get the result, and then you take these results to a post processor to check the results graphically. This is the typical CFD process. The first one is called the pre-processing. The second one, you can see it is a solution. The third is the post-processing. So what are the basic steps actually in CFD analysis? Is first you start with identifying the problem. I have 10 minutes to finish, so I'll try to finish it now. And then you execute the solver, and finally you do the post-processing. Each of these steps actually you need to be careful about what you are trying to do. So first of all, you need to be very careful about what results you are really looking for and how they will be used. It is very important actually to ask this question at the beginning. How the results obtained by you is going to be used. Then once you are clear about your objectives, then you need to know what physical models actually will be appropriate for your analysis. Whether you should be K-epsilon model, for example, or K-omega model. Whether you should use a Eulerian model for the multi-phase flow or Lagrangian model for the multi-phase flow, things like that. What assumptions you need to make to simplify the problem, and then whether you require a unique modeling capability, you ask this question. And then you also decide what is the degree of accuracy that you are looking for and how quickly you need the results. All these are important actually questions to ask at the very beginning. Next step is to discretize actually to identify a proper domain for the analysis. So the most important thing about deciding the domain is whether we have proper information about the boundary conditions or the domain boundaries. And then whether I can extend the domain to a point where reasonable data exists. I also ask the question whether it can be simplified to 2D. Then I go to discretization. Okay, that typical ways to calculate to compute the CAD model. You take either a CAD software, you have a CAD model, or you have engineering drawings. You convert it to your CAD model, and then you mesh it using either structured mesh or unstructured mesh. And while creating the mesh, you have to be very careful because the time spent in generating a mesh can constitute up to 80% of the simulation time, most of the cases. But generating good quality mesh is time consuming, but this time spent actually on generating good quality mesh compensates for the reduction in the CPU time by the solver in calculating the solution. So you decide actually which kind of element is the most appropriate for your domain, depends on the type of domain that you have, and the grid resolution that you will require depends on the accuracy of solution that you are looking for. You decide whether I should use a hexa mesh or a tetra mesh. And then each of the meshes actually have their own advantages and disadvantages. Like structured mesh give numerically, they give very accurate results and they converge very well, all the schemes. Unstructured meshes are required when you have a complex domain where they cannot make a structured mesh. Mesh quality is important actually. You need to be able to maintain a good aspect ratio, mesh uniformity, and skewness angle should be within limits. So, for example, this kind of mesh is not good, but this mesh has a very large aspect ratio. It is not good, for example, to resolve the boundary layer. But this is okay. Although it has a large aspect ratio, this is okay because you need to design the mesh so that the gradients are resolved equally well in all directions. In this case, as you know, the gradients are very high in the vertical direction. So I need to have a very fine mesh in the vertical direction. In the horizontal direction, the mesh can be slightly coarser. And mesh should be more or less uniform. That means you should not have very small cells adjacent to very large cell. So once you have set up the mesh, next is I define the numerical model. So I define all the conditions like boundary conditions, initial conditions, solver controls everything, and then I compute the solution. Now, how do I decide if the solution is correct, whatever I have obtained? So you need to check the convergence. Changes in solution variables from one iteration to another are negligible. The residuals over the iterations, they reduce to acceptable level. Then only you assume that, then only you decide that it is converged, solution has converged. Then once you have the results, you need to take it to a post-processor and analyze the results. So you need to check what is the overall flow pattern, separation, whether you have captured all the things. You need to be able to calculate forces and moments for some of the cases where you are interested in fluid structural interaction. Heat transfer coefficients, maybe you would like to check flux balances. All these are examining the results. So in post-processing, you already know very well about it because CFD is also called as colorful fluid dynamics. So you can produce beautiful, colorful plots of contours of various variables of velocity vectors. The last but not the least, you should also understand that CFD also has some limitations because all the models that we have discussed, like turbulence model, they have their own limitations. Similarly, the models for combustion or multi-phase flow also have their own limitations. They lack in accuracy in some types of flows. You need to understand those limitations. And apart from the errors in the physical models, you also have errors in the numerical models. You have round-off error, truncation error, because you have used for example, you might have used a very coarse mesh. Then you will have more errors. There could be errors in the boundary conditions also sometimes. So all these bring errors into the solution. So one of the best resources actually to learn how to practice CFD variable is the ECOFTAC best practice guidelines. With this one, I would like to give a very short introduction to our Fluidence software platform, which will be used in the training program. I will tell only overall things. I will not go into the details because they will be covered in individual sessions. I will finish this quickly in 5 minutes. So as I told in the beginning, Fluidence has 2 types of software platform. One of them is a general purpose multiphysics platform called MP, and you have application dedicated platform called Ventil and Panache. So in the multiphysics simulation tool, I already told that MP consists of various modules, CAD module, CFD module, and it also has a FSI, CST, or the electromagnetics modules. So this MP software is designed actually on a basis. So it is meant for use by a design engineer who knows how to use CAD. He also knows about the problem physics, but he doesn't know the numerical things, how to make the mesh or how to run a CFD simulation. He may not be known. So a design engineer defines the CAD model. He defines the problem physics on the CAD model and he gives this model to the simulation engineer. He takes it to the next step where he discretizes it, generates the mesh, does the pre-processing, gets the solution and passes the solution to the design engineer. So design engineer can see the results on the geometry. So MP is actually designed like that. So the first part is called CAE, where I can do these 2 things. And MP has 2 other modules which as the simulation engineer will use. This man is what is known as MPG, MPGUI, and you also have MP solver. Fluidence MP has various solvers. 2 classes of solvers it has is the finite volume solver and a finite element solver. The finite volume solver is typically used for the fluid flow, electromagnetics, acoustics, and heat transfer. So finite volume solver has actually 3 solvers embedded in MP, you have NSTVD explicit solver, a coupled solver, NSMB semi-implicit coupled momentum heat solver, and thirdly, NSNT implicit segregated solver. Mostly, I think you will be using the NSNT implicit solver through the training program. The FE solver can do electromagnetics. It has a physics for the stress analysis, acoustics, and heat transfer. You can do using the FE solver static analysis, explicit transient, implicit transient, or you can also do an eigenvalue analysis. All these things will be brought into detail in later sessions. CFD modeling capabilities, there are many. So the MP has, like any other software, it has various solvers. It can handle different types of flows, turbulence models, there are many. There are many multi-phase models, combustion models. All these will be detailed in the later sessions. It also has detailed structural modeling capability, which will be brought out in the session on FSI. There are many applications of CFD, like different things. All these applications will be brought forth in the sessions later. There are many FSI applications, again, which will be discussed in one of the sessions. CST applications, conjugate heat transfer, electromagnetics applications. These are for the general purpose multiphysics tool. The second platform that we have is called the application dedicated software platform design. It is designed for use by domain knowledgeable person, but he may not have enough CFD training, or he may not know anything about CFD at all, but still he can use the software. It comes with a customized preprocessor. It has a preprocessor, has a customized geometry modeling, which is actually creating the geometry. It has an automatic measure, and it automatically sets up all the flow related physics. You have a backend solver, which is based on the MP solver only. MP solver plus application specific physics is added to that. And the results again he can analyze in the front end. So for example, Ventil, it comes with a customized CAE, where instead of creating points, lines, and surfaces, typically what I do in the CAD software, instead I directly define a floor plan of a building, walls of a building, doors and windows, fans and extractors. I can directly define that, and I can mesh it. There's automatic measure, and pre-processing is also, most of the things are automatic. Then you have a backend parallel solver, and I can see the results back on the GUI. This will be taken up in one of the sessions, I think tomorrow. Panache also has a similarly a customized platform. So geometry means I can directly define buildings, urban areas, vegetations, or altitude contours, which are relevant for my atmospheric pollution simulations. I can define stacks, roads, and other types of sources which are emitting pollutants. It has an automatic measure. Again, automatically sets up the problem mostly. Backend solver, Panache solver, and then again, you can see the results on the GUI. You can do such simulations using the Panache. Krishna Prasad will be giving details of this in one of the sessions. With this, I conclude actually now, finally. I'm sorry I took slightly more time than what I should have. If you have any questions, I'm ready to take. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It was a very precise and relevant presentation. I'm sure all of us in this room relate to each and every word that you mentioned. Thank you for sharing your presentation, sir. Dear participants, if you have any questions, please post it on the chat box. Professor Yadu Krishna is going to read it, and Mr. Arun Murthy sir will answer those questions. Thank you.
Arun sir, I got few questions. Shall I read it?
Please.
There is one question. Can we solve melting and solidification problems with the fluidine?
Yes.
Also, species concentration in these problems.
You can solve melting and solidification problems. To some extent, you can solve. There are some examples. If time permits, we'll show them.
Another question is, even though CFD is an advanced level, still it is called an approximate method. Why?
Because as I told, CFD composes of the physical models and numerical models. CFD models, I use models for most of the things. I use a model for turbulence. I use a model to calculate the chemical reaction rate. I use a model for describing the two-phase flow. all these models have their own limitations, and they come with errors in some cases. Apart from the physical errors in the physical models, you also have numerical errors, which come from the discretization errors, basically. So both errors contribute actually to uncertainties in CFD results. So one should be aware actually when CFD results are being interpreted, one should be aware of such limitations. That's why it is very important to choose the best physical model for any application. Like I told you, you have to choose the correct turbulence model. If you choose a wrong turbulence model, you will get more error in the solution. So CFD is still an approximate method, although it has been now fine-tuned to give more and more accurate results.
Yes. Sir, another question. What are the advantages of meshless technique over machine technique?
Meshless techniques are highly computationally intensive, first of all. You will still need some approximation because you have to calculate ultimately you have to calculate it's a differential equation that you are trying to solve. So you have to approximate the gradients. How do you calculate the gradients now? You can use Taylor series kind of expressions to calculate the gradients or divergences. When you use the meshless method, for example, then you have to still calculate the gradient at a particular location. How do you do that? I need to know the values of all the surrounding what is known as nodes. I may not have a mesh structure actually connecting them, but I still need to know the values in all the surrounding nodes. And then I need to calculate the gradient or the divergence at a particular location. This can be time consuming. This is complex. They come with their own numerical errors again.
Sir, another question. Can we design complex structure like helicopter blade and analyze using Fluidigm?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Another one. Can we simulate granular flows using Fluidigm?
Yes. We have a DEM also. If time permits, Dr. Anil Kumar will describe it in the multi-phase flow session.
Someone is asking, Inamul Hassan is asking, does it provide CAD software for design for models?
Yes.
I think he's expecting
it
some
comes with the CAD
models.
software, but I'm not very sure if it has been given right now in this session because CAD model training again takes time.
Yeah. So I think we will be providing the CAD model, right? Directly.
Yeah. Yes.
Can we use for welding thermomechanical analysis considering fluid flow in metal melting and solidification?
Yes.
What are the advanced features there are in Fluidigm compared to ANSYS?
I will tell that it's very strong in combustion, for example, compared to ANSYS models. Our models are very good. I have no hesitation in telling that we have very good models for explosions, combustion, and fire. Or multi-phase flows, our results are more trusted by nuclear industry than ANSYS.
Okay.
For example, the BARC uses, for all its multi-phase flow applications, it uses only Fluidigm. It doesn't use any other software. Although they have ANSYS, they don't use ANSYS for multi-phase flows.
Okay. So is it feasible for metal flow?
Metal flow means again melted.
Yeah.
So, you have two kinds of metal flows. One could be the metals are normally conductive electrically. So you take advantage of that, and when it flows under the influence of electromagnetic field, it becomes a magnetohydrodynamics. You have a model for that. Or the simple metal flows we can simulate. You're using different models for the viscosity. Normally metals can have different types of viscosity behavior compared to gases or the liquids. So there are models available for that also.
Okay, so I'll take one more question, sir. There are so many questions. We will answer them later. I'll take one more question and we will finish this session. Can we use ICM in this?
ICM CFD, that's for meshing.
Yeah.
That means you already have a mesh generated by ICM CFD. You can use it.
Yes.
The modes of transferring meshes from one software to another, it can be done.
Participants, I think there are a few more questions. We will answer that later. I think we can conclude this session. Hari sir.
Thank you, Professor Yadu. Thank you, sir, Arun sir. We will end this session now. We will take a break until 11:15. Then we will join back for the next session. The next session is from Mr. Subhash Sinde. We'll join back at 11:15. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone.